Hello everyone, welcome to Prolong Your Days with Dr. Christy Anderson. Today I am just bursting with excitement to start sharing with you some of the research I've been doing, because I know a lot of you out there are probably getting a little frustrated, although we're starting to gain some momentum this week, so it's picking up in the news. You're probably getting more if you're keeping your ear to the grind. But you know, in these weeks when you're just getting pummeled with negative, spin news and lies, and it's hard to weed through all the nonsense, I have been doing a deep dive research, and I've already got one video out of the first the Kraken quote case by Cindy Powell. And so I read through that. So if you just want someone to read it to you while you're doing your dishes or whatever, so you can hear all the details, but you don't have to read it yourself, I'll give you a link to that in below in the description. So today, what I wanted to do is I'm going to do a series to kind of blend together the different things that God is doing and the different elements of this kind of three-part or three-front assault, I guess you could say, that we are conducting right now, both from a natural level and a spiritual level. And so this battle to restore truth and justice is going on, and it's going on a three-front level regarding this whole election process, and really the bigger, deeper, wider, long-term implications. It's not just about the initial battle we're fighting now, but the long-term war. So I want to share with you first the foundational elements of kind of the natural and spiritual, how God is working together in both within the community of believers and the different arms of the government, the different branches of our government, and how all this is coming together, and the different players and some of the crazy stuff that's going on, and help you. I'm going to provide you in these videos with actual legal documents. I'm going to show you where to find them, and you can go look it up yourself. And I'm going to show you actual legit stuff that's not just, oh, in the news they said, and you have no idea if they said it or not. Okay, so we're going to do deep dives. We're going to get in the weeds as much as we can, so I can really show you all those details and kind of try to pull them all together, because there's so many things going on, so many cases, different ways of that the law is going to be argued, different types of courts, different whole methods. So I'm going to try to unwind some of that, and then fill in the biblical implications and applications and things that you can be doing to be involved right now to really restore the foundation of truth and justice in our nation for your children and for your grandchildren and for all of us. Okay, so let's jump right in. Number one, we're going to look at the legislative front, then the legal front, and then the spiritual front. You're going to have key parts to play in all of these. Okay, maybe not so much the legal, but maybe helping contribute to a lot of these funds that are really having to spend a lot of money, but it's worth it. What they're doing is so important. So to just really save freedom, so that our children don't have to end up in a communist situation where we're in underground churches. Okay, so let's look first at the legal front. All right. Actually, before we get into the details of those, I want to give you a few terms, legal terms, that are going to kind of be coming up, and as you're listening to things and looking at things in the news, that might help you understand a few things. What I thought was very interesting, especially because of the biblical connection, is that in the legal documents, a lot of times in the older cases, they literally use the word pray, and to pray to the court. And that really is talking about going before the court seeking relief. So that's an element, and even in the old cases, you'll actually read where they'll use the term praying that we pray to the court for the relief sought. So obviously that's having deep roots in our biblical concepts, and we'll see some of that at the end here when we get to the third prong, if you will. Now, the legal standing is kind of an issue that's come up in the news. Some of the early cases when things first fired up that did get didn't go forward and were dismissed. In some cases, that was because the people bringing the case forward didn't have legal standing. They didn't have a right to bring the case for the collective, for the group, like us as an individual voter doesn't necessarily have the right to sue the Secretary of State or anyone for something related to fraud or whatever individually, but collectively we can get together and do this through our representatives. So our electors, for example, in the Powell case, the electors that would be for the Republican Party, selected for the Republican Party, if they were to be our electors to go to the Electoral College, they could sue. Okay, so in some cases that's who has standing to represent the group that has been that fraud that has had a problem, or that this fraud has taken place or whatever. We have a bug. Now there's also this thing called a cause of action related to standing, where I have to define that. There's the kind of two elements. You have a group of operative facts, they would say, giving rise to one or more basis for suing someone, okay? And then it's also kind of described as a legal theory of a lawsuit, so the ground of action. So, for example, Cindy Powell is filed the main cracking case in a federal court, and she's got a federal question, so related to the case, as well as some state law stuff and some other stuff. But because she has a big federal question, that allows her to file in federal court, and so she is doing that route. Then we also have some of, like Giuliani, mostly them filing in lower state courts and superior courts and so forth. Like here in Arizona with the head, Kelly Ward, of the Arizona Republican Party, suing Governor Doug Ducey. Okay, so we have different courts, and you're going to have different legal arguments that are put forth, different causes of action that they're taking, steps and legal theories. And it's very important when you file and you have certain time period that you can file something, and if you don't do it in a expedited way at a certain period of time, you can't do it anymore. So if you don't do it, if you wait around and you're too lazy and you don't do it, then they can say, nope, sorry. You can't do that anymore. The statute of limitations is run out. So there's that issue that can come up depending on how you argue, the theories you argue, the facts you're bringing forward. You can add claims under certain circumstances and not others, and so forth. So there's other issues that come up like that can be problematic and can kind of throw wrenches around in what's going on. And so that can be spun by the false prophet media that likes to make things look like, nothing to see here. They're all just getting dismissed and all this other nonsense. So be careful of that. Then we have the burden of proof is at issue here. You'll need to understand what level we're looking at, because some people can get confused with maybe a criminal case, and in some cases there are criminal things going on, but right now we're looking at mostly civil lawsuits under a burden of a lower burden of proof, which would be the preponderance of the evidence. So that's the lowest standard. Then usually in a criminal case you'll have something like beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's a highest level. But then in between there's also kind of a clear and convincing, which could kind of go either way, but mostly we're looking right now at preponderance of the evidence. Okay, so looking a little deeper in Black's Law Dictionary in the 10th edition here, I thought it was cute and just kind of interesting how you prayed to the court. So I want to show you the legal definition here, where it says prayer for relief. And it says a request addressed to the court and appearing at the end of a pleading. A request for specific relief or damages, often shortened to just prayer. Also termed demand for relief or request for relief. And then there's a quote, the prayer for relief regarding that. The plaintiff prays in his bill for the relief to which he supposes himself entitled on the case made out in the bill. This is called the special prayer. He then prays for a general relief, usually in these words, and the plaintiff or your orator prays for such further or other relief as the nature of the case may require, and as may be agreeable to equity and good conscience. Now, both prayers are generally inserted in the bill. The special prayer first, the general following, and that's from the Law of Pleadings under the Codes of Civil Procedure 69 from Edwin E. Bryant. Then there's like some stuff for general prayer and special prayer there, and some other little nuances, but I just thought that was kind of interesting, because if you think about it from a biblical perspective, what are we doing when we pray? We're seeking to stand before the Lord We have to have standing. We have to have the ability to go before him, and we have to petition him for relief, for justice, because that's usually what we're seeking, because we're usually like, Lord, help, right? So think about this and the standing we have in the Lord, and the fact that the Lord had standing, and some different scriptures we'll go through near the end, and just how that plays into what's happening even now and what we're doing when we go to the earthly magistrates that God instituted, and we're seeking justice, and how that works. Now, under the preponderance of the evidence, this is one of the ways to define that. It's a type of evidentiary standard used in a burden of proof analysis. Under the preponderance standard, the burden of proof is met when the party with the burden convinces the fact finder that there is a greater than 50% chance that the claim is true. This is the burden of proof in a civil trial. So, in other words, you have to have enough suspicious things, like the video that was put out yesterday at the Georgia hearing. And that video puts enough suspicion out there with all the other witnesses and all the other evidence that they're looking at, that they have already sworn testimonies, eyewitnesses. Now they don't have the, total smoking gun, because all of the people are trying that have like Dominion software, and anyone who's been involved in this fraud know that they've been doing fraud. And there's well known already, that's why the state of Texas rejected the Dominion system, that it is completely corruptible, and people look the other way very largely on purpose. This has been almost, you could say, a coup, and that's some of the things that are being alleged. Bug! Now, that's generally what's being alleged, because, the FBI, CIA, DOD, DOJ, they all know this is a serious threat, and they all just look the other way because there's a bit of a, conspiracy, people getting this conspiracies. But in this case, it's a legit conspiracy. Foreign actors are definitely involved, and it is there is a deep state element that is trying to, since President Trump was in office, get him out, and now they've put, everything at it. And guess what? I'm sorry, the prophets have spoke the Lord, what the Lord said, and he has been affirming it every step of the way. And now we're going to see it more and more come to fruition through the court system, that God has already determined that there's going to be two terms, because he wants to bring health and healing and revival to this nation. And so he has opened that door for President Trump, and there's nothing the enemy can do to close it. Sorry, Charlie. They're going to have some weeping and gnashing of teeth in the next month or so. So I look forward to that. Be encouraged. Keep praying. Keep working. Keep in the fight. We are in an information warfare situation right now. Okay, so preponderance of the evidence. Let's move on. No evidence. The claims of the false prophets that there is no evidence we got to really pick apart and understand what is going on here, so we can be very educated in our response to people and people around you. You really want to educate people, because we really want to be arbiters of truth and justice and life and righteousness, so that we can free people from this heavy bondage that is an attack that has been on our nation and our people, and people are really hurting. So if we can walk in boldness and truth, if we can have such confidence that you're not just going to flop over and die because there's a bad flu going on, that there's things you can do that don't require ruining everyone's life, and you can be free and live free, and you don't have to be scared. Although if you don't know the Lord, you should be scared, because you need to get right with him, just in case. You should get right with him. You should be scared if you don't know him, because that is very serious. But if you do know him, then we don't have to be afraid. And you can know him very quickly and very easily. Now, the election voter fraud is one issue. Then there's legislative failures, and then there's computer fraud. Okay, so these are all different sides of the fraud. That's why it's so dynamic and not that easy to just like, whatever, no evidence, no evidence. Which way am I going to legally, each element has to be argued legally in a different way. It is deep and wide. So let's look at some of these. one of the first things that's a boatload of evidence is just the regular old election voter fraud. The smaller but significant in battleground states arm of this fraud, right? They're smaller little batches of votes. Okay, that's when we had basically broke the algorithm on the computer side of the fraud here, because we so came out in droves to vote for President Trump that we broke the algorithm, meaning they couldn't keep up. We literally were going to outperform it to the point that he would win anyway. But they stopped all the voting at one point so that they could mess with the system and then have to inject all these lower level election fraud systems in to win in these battleground states. Okay, so to push him over the edge because they underestimated. So we have fake ballot issues, okay? Hundreds of eyewitnesses to all of these various things with fake and false ballots or changing ballots. Already this week in Arizona, Kelly Ward's suit in the Superior Court here, she actually did a teeny weeny little 100 ballot sample of duplicate ballots, but did find 2 ballots that were changed from Trump. In one case to Biden and just taking it away from Trump in another case, putting it in both spots in both for Trump and a third party or another person, so where it invalidated it. So those duplicate ballots where something happens and they have to make a duplicate were improperly duplicated, thus removing two ballots for Trump, and it ended up being the way it's calculated at 3% discrepancy. But that caused now today and tomorrow, be in prayer, be praying that they're going to look now at 2,000 more ballots and see if that statistic holds, and then they'll continue along. There's some statutes. I'll get into the weeds on Arizona in another video, but that gives you a little bit of a heads up what's going on here. And then of course our legislature, we've been putting the pressure on. And for you guys in New Mexico, I'm going to be bringing you some exciting stuff of what you can help you guys organize and fight better, like we're doing over here, especially to put the screws to the Republican Party to really get their rear in gear and stop some of these rhino blockages that is really messing up the party and things like that, in addition to like when Democrats are having the same problem with some of their extremes. So you have kind of extreme groups doing crazy stuff, and then all the rational people need to get together and work together. So ideas for that and to help you out there. So then we have the spike data. Okay, so within fake ballots, you have the spiked injecting of massive amounts that would be physically, humanly impossible at certain points in times that just happen to be in the middle of the night, when no one's looking, just all of a sudden, it's just a massive, I guess they just got a second wind there at 4 a.m., whatever. Anyway, obvious things that are completely suspect and mathematically impossible. But, the leftists, their worldview is not about reality and absolute anything. I mean, they don't even have absolute boy and girl. They just have, whatever they want to make up. So they have a tendency to do a little reader response with the statutes, but that is not going to fly in the courts of law, okay? In actual court, I'm sorry, words have meaning. Now, they can manipulate that a little bit when you get liberal judges in there, but for all intents and purposes, when I say reader response, what I'm saying is that just like in biblical legal, when we're looking at the Torah and we're looking at what the words mean and we're looking at hermeneutics, they had a reader response, meaning I can make it say whatever I want, and whatever it means to me is what it means. That's like a reader response. Instead of the person writing had an intention, like the legislature had an intention in what they wrote, and oh, by the way, Secretary of State, you actually have to obey that. You can't just blow it off and change it willy-nilly. You can make your rules to help facilitate obeying that, but your rules cannot change what's going on in terms of what the statute actually said and what the legislator intended in the words used in the statute. Okay, so that would be originalist versus kind of the reader response. You know, words just have meaning of whatever it means to them. And we see this in some of the testimony yesterday from one of the senators in particular. She was a hoot. She just, anyway, I won't talk negative, but she was definitely reader response. Anyway, let's look at fake voter issues, okay? Fake voter issues. That is another issue that was another arm of fraud. So many people had, what happened to them, they would show up to the poll and someone had applied for a mail-in ballot on their behalf, unbeknownst to them. And so then they would have to do a provisional, or depending on what their state was, if they could actually vote still, but then it canceled out their own vote a lot of times, and or not, it's unclear, and who knows did that, and it's all very illegal, and that was huge, big problem in a lot of the states, and a lot of people had that problem. We saw one young lady yesterday give a testimony for that in Georgia, that happened to her. She's only her second time voting, a college student. Anyway, so then, you know, you have all of that kind of line of fake voters, dead voters, people who moved and actually changed their domicile. They told the post office, I'm out of state, I'm moving, send my mail there. Like, I'm no longer here, and not just like a college student who's going to come back, or someone who's in the military who can legally vote and be gone. But we're talking people who know, I really moved out of state and I'm voting in another state, and they were given, you know, mailed a ballot and so forth. Then we have denying fair and equitable viewing issues for both sides. We've never really had the extreme, unjust, unrighteous, and very just obviously, if you don't want everyone looking at what you're doing, it's probably because you're doing something wrong and illegal. And therefore, we had lots and lots of people experiencing being kicked out of when they're poll watchers and they're trying to make sure that both sides are doing things fairly, and there should be a person from both sides so that, you know, both sides can agree amicably that, okay, both of you agree this is a valid vote or not, and so forth, and that it's fair. Well, that definitely wasn't done, as you know. All right, so that is just part one. So that has its own whole legal theories and approaches to dealing with that issue. Then part two is a big one. This one's really going to heat up in Wisconsin, and we're going to see some very, very promising things. I think that's going to be one of the ones maybe even that the Supreme Court will pick up, because it has a great constitutional question and would change the outcome of the election. Therefore, once that domino falls, I think boom, 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 we're going to see some exciting things happen. So that one is one to watch, and I'll have some details on that. So the legislative failures, this is a whole line of cases that you're starting to see come out where prior courts have already ruled on this kind of issue, that if there's a major blunder where a state statute is not followed in the manner in which the legislature said that they should, that the Secretary of State and that they should be conducting the election, then that can be a deal breaker, and forcing it where it's an automatic disqualifying of the election result, and because it can't be certified because things were done so badly. And we have a strong case for that, I believe, in Wisconsin. We will get details on that one on a separate video. Then we have the final element, which is just the straight up Dominion computer fraud and all of the algorithms and the fractional voting. If you've not really bought into that, I will get a whole video just on that element, because Dr. Shiva has a good analysis, but he kind of was moving quick. So if you don't really understand fractions very well, the basic simple way I can put it is there's a difference between tabulating one person, one vote, right? So it'd be all whole numbers. But what you'll notice is that the machine spits out apparently a fractional system. Dr. Shiva had one scenario they ran just for Maricopa County, which is the county we have Dominion was injected into our system, and that we had the most problems with and the most manipulation that we were seeing, that's really costing the election at a very small rate. But this is the focus. Where you had that, you have where you'd see video clips of literally on the night of the election on like CNN, where you see these clips, and I might show a few here real quickly, where you see that it switches from an exact amount will switch the votes, okay? And the algorithms start kicking in and doing this, and nobody's paying attention. It's taking it like 20,000 almost from, in one case, Trump, and putting it to Biden, and you're watching it on the ticker on CNN, and you're just sitting there going, how is this possible? But what happens is, one of the ways that this happens, in one of the ways that the machine can be manipulated, there's many hacks that can be done. It's like, 2 minutes for the DEF CON level guys and 7 minutes for your elementary school kid who just knows how to hack. I mean, it's literally that bad. And there's been evidence of this forever. So this is no surprise, but everybody looked the other way, largely on purpose. FBI, CIA, and all of those, DOJ and DOD. Are you ever going to do anything for us, guys? Come on. So hoping they get their butts in gear and start investigating all of this and really bring some people to justice. Now, normally you have like 2 people, right? Let's just make it simple. Each of you have 1 vote. That would be 2 votes total, right? And so it should be whole numbers, right? If one candidate got both votes, they would have 100%, and the other person would have 0. If they got 1 vote and 1 vote for each candidate, it would be 50-50. Nice round numbers, no dot decimal stuff, right, afterward. When you see this dot decimal stuff, and you saw this in the spit out of the recent video that's been going around the internet the last couple of days, I posted it on my Facebook with the, I believe it was someone in some legislature somewhere, somebody was involved in the voting systems, tested it, and it literally spit out, they had, I think, what was it, 7, 8, yeah, no, 9, I don't know, I can't remember the numbers. But anyway, it removed one of the votes, and they were all just standing there like, how did that happen? And then they went to look at the audit part of it, and it still had that spit out, and they were like, I don't even know what to do with this. It literally did it behind the scenes, not traceable. Totally the point that Cindy Powell has been making for a long time, justifying, that. And there's many different ways that this can happen. So we have to have a forensic audit. Why, with the evidence stuff, do we not have that? Why have they not seized that? Where are you, FBI? Hello, go see some stuff and do some forensic auditing. So be in prayer also for all the witnesses and the people with courage that are standing up to a nasty deep state who knows they've done wrong and needs to be held accountable. All right, so we've talked about the different no evidence claims, which are debunked. If you actually go in, and I will give you all the links to look at all the evidence, and you can decide for yourself. All right, and then tell other people, because information, put the information out. When you get the videos, screen record it and share it on Facebook so it takes them longer to shut you down, because they don't like the truth. So we've got to be creative in how we communicate the truth, because the truth will set you free. All right, now, what evidence is needed? We need a forensic audit, as I said. So the video, like I said, would be like yesterday, everyone was like, smoking gun video. Well, it gives us a big boost in the suspicion level that totally, at least in that case, pushed them well over the preponderance of the evidence that they brought forward at that hearing in Georgia yesterday, enough that when presented to the court, even with cross-examination, I think would easily go past the preponderance of the evidence, 51% by far, that allows them to move to discovery, where then now we can seize, get the court to let us have access to and do a forensic audit. Say it with me, people. Forensic audit. That is the only thing you need to tell your legislator every single day. Forensic audit. Thankfully and hopefully, it's not just some kind of low-level audit, but a forensic audit. Be sure to say forensic. Did I say forensic? Forensic audit. That's how we'll shut the news up and tell them, okay, now we have the smoking gun evidence. But when, the evil people doing the fraud are holding the cards of the evidence that we need for your little no evidence, that would be the smoking gun, you need discovery to actually work. And I think we had in Nevada where they had it and they were trying to get it and they still didn't let them have access, and they were having to bring in another judge or some other craziness that I haven't quite fully vetted out on that one because I wasn't following it as closely. But I'll get that for you. Anyway, so that is key. When you are talking to people, to your legislators, tell them forensic audit, and we will be happy with nothing less. Total forensic audit, because all the cards will be on the table if we do that. We will have all the smoking guns we need to actually win the war, not just the battle. The battle is getting the actual real people that were elected in whatever offices, in many offices, actually elected to those offices and not cheated out of it through fraud and this crazy deep state coup going on. Okay. So, moving on. So, I had said that there was a three-front battle, a three-pronged approach to this battle for restoring the foundation of our nation for truth and justice. The legislative, the legal, and I said the spiritual. Now, that legislative, that is a court of public opinion. That is where you see a lot of these hearings, some quote unofficial, whatever, but they're very effective in getting out information when we are in this information warfare. Can you say it? It's a warfare. Now, being a Marine officer in my 20s body, I'm in full Marine mode right now because we are in a war, people, for our children and our grandchildren. And when you get Mama Bear mad, oh, you better watch out. We're after you. We see you. You see me? I see you. I see you. I see what you're doing. And I am a darn good researcher. I will be up your rear if you don't give us justice, representatives. Love you. Mwah, 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 mwah. I know you'll do the right thing. Okay, so we've got the court of public opinion. Giuliani's killing it on that, going around and getting the information out there, forcing the news, the, false prophets. Remember, don't listen to that stuff. Don't come in agreement with the lie. You empower the liar. La 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 la. Do not listen to them. They speak lies. They do not speak the truth. The truth is not in them. So do your own research, and I'll help you as much as I can. And if you have questions, send it to me. All right, at prolongyourdays.com. All right, public hearings, we talked about that. Now, the goal of this legislative front on this end is to inform the public. Obviously, as I said, there's a lot of misinformation. Literally, the things that the CIA did to other countries that was wicked and evil has now been turned on us. People in the know are probably blown away going, I never thought that this nasty stuff would be turned on our own country. This is horrid. So I'm sure some of them are just aghast, but some of them are literally in on it. So we got to weed out the bad apples. All right? Now, let's see. In that information, remember, information plus spiritual anointing is going to be super powerful. We are winning. We will fight back, and we will win. So be encouraged. It's also, though, these legislative kind of in the media court of public opinion things with these hearings that Giuliani was doing and the others is to inform the legislators. Because a lot of them, we haven't had this since I think the 1800s or something, where this kind of situation came up, where we were in kind of this fraudulent election, and what does the Constitution require then, and what are the legal options, and everybody's kind of we've never had to do this. So partly it's to inform the legislature that they have the authority to step in, and it even, according to the constitutional law professor, I can't think of his name offhand, Eastman, I think, he was saying yesterday at the Georgia hearing, and he was just killing it on that, where those legislators and any others, all of us in the battleground states, have the right and been given by the Constitution the full authority to take complete control, to be our representatives and do the right thing based on the evidence of what has transpired. If there was all the different legal points that we've already talked about, the different types of fraud, the different things that have gone wrong. And so they have the power to act on our behalf and appoint the proper electors according to how they understand is the truth based on the evidence. Okay, so to inform the legislators also, and then we also, third kind of arm of this legislative arm is this kind of the God motive behind this sort of information war. And why, God could have just had him go through. He could have like supernaturally changed the numbers in the machine. But what this is allowing for is to bring up all the muck and bring it to the fold. It's shining a light on the darkness. And that's why it's important that we not only stay positive, stay fighting, keep fighting in the heavenly court through prayer and intercession, and being on the ground, active, involved in your state. This is where the battle is won. So the deep state kind of corruption needed to be ferreted out, and had we not voted in such mass and broke that algorithm, this thing could have been where we had a shadow government that took over, and you would never get a conservative in there again. And we were going to go right into like, hello, Holocaust 2.0. No, thank you. Not on my watch. Second point then would be the legal front. And having the legal front, this is of course held in a court of law, on earth, court of law. And the goal of that is obviously to provide a second witness through so we have the executive branch is in question right now, right? And so the legislative branch needs to have a secondary support of the courts, because if the legislature and the courts both come to the same conclusion about the fraud and they work together, you have two witnesses, right? And so then they're going to support each other, and people will accept the result and think it was fairly, with the two branches of government supporting each other's conclusions and the evidence. And so we have a peaceful transition to who should be the proper and who we all actually voted for person in office. Okay, so providing that second witness, as I said, and multiple points of attack are going to be in this approach. You're going to have in-state courts and then federal courts, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So the federal courts would require a federal question. And the Supreme Court, which we'll ultimately probably get to at some point here, maybe, unless some of the legislatures just take it on, which they have the authority to do themselves, and the dominoes start falling, based on the evidence, and then they just take it on. But I think probably we're going to end up in the Supreme Court on this, and so that's fine. We have a second witness. That's wonderful. That will pan out. There is plenty, trust me, evidence. That's why you had like the Veritas catching CNN in their statement, and the first post he posted was like, I can't even remember the exact words, but it was something like, she was sitting there saying like that, almost like they knew that, Biden would never be president, but, they're trying to keep this whole, mirage going. And so that was kind of funny. Anyway, another bug, sorry. All right, so multiple points of attack for that. So we've got the federal courts and the state courts, and those are going to be different and nuance, and we'll explain that as we get into the weeds on each of the cases. Now, multiple legal approaches then and theories are going to be involved. And in that case, multiple legal theories warrants different types of claims, and it can hem you in a little bit depending on what the set of facts you have in each instance, and then what theory you're going to go on. And then how that's going to pan out. So, what can you prove without discovery is one approach, more in the Giuliani cases that he's sort of heading up for Trump and the other lawyers surrounding like Trump's team. They're kind of going for more of an approach attacking the legal violations, and because those are already proven that will upset the outcome and change things. So a lot of the cases are kind of moving that direction versus the cases like here, one of the local, done by our own Republican, head of the Republican Party. And then, they've got that case in Superior Court, but then the federal question is more, this is your Kraken attack, okay? So that two-pronged attack is going at kind of a state battle level. So you win the battle, you get the proper people elected that were actually voted for. Whatever votes actually were valid, tell us who that is. And so once you get the proper people that the people actually voted for in office, now they can win the war. So the Kraken case I see is more of why they split from each other is there were two legal theories, two approaches. One is going for the battle, the other is going to win the war. And deep state war, so that's going to be a longer term thing probably. May or may not get to, it'll go beyond, that kind of thing is like a years long kind of depth of investigation and battling in the courts, I'd imagine. So that's more like we're going to win the war that way, we're going to win the battle this other way. At least that's the approach I'm seeing. You can see for yourself as we dive into the cases in other videos. Finally, spiritual front. Okay, so on the spiritual front, these, of course, are held in the courts of heaven, right? So the goal is to save the people, okay? Got to save the people. That is heaven's goal. That is the Lord's goal. It's always about rescuing our silly rears, okay? So we all know 2 Chronicles, right? The 7:13, and I'm including 13 with 14 so you get a little context, which is apropos for 2020, because it says, if I shut up the heavens so that there's no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence, okay? That would be like, those little unseen bugs like a coronavirus, COVID-19, among my people. Well, and my people, then he says in verse 14, which is usually where everybody picks up, if that happens, and he says, well, if that happens, if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sin and heal their land. Note we have the pestilence from this year in context. Then, though it says my people, well, that's pretty much everyone. Every human being is God's people in terms of all of us are children of God. God created all human beings. But we're going to narrow that pool down to who are called by my name. Now this is a smaller pool of people. People who self-identify with Yeshua or Jesus, right? Okay? Yeshua is just his Hebrew name. Okay, so now we got a smaller pool of people, but it's not those people alone. You're only going to have standing in this court if you're also going to humble yourself. And not only humble yourself, but pray. So have you humbled yourself in this season? Have you spent time in prayer? Should be daily. Seeking his face. Right in his face. It's literally like in his face, right? You go before someone and get in their face if you're seeking to have intimate interaction with them, right? And finally, can't forget the most important part that everyone tends to forget at times, turn from their wicked ways. Now, why would that impact our standing before the heavenly court? Why would that? Because you have to, if you've got aught against your brother, you got to go deal with junk before God will hear you and respond to your prayer. And what was prayer? Contextually, it was you need a judgment from the judge because there's something, you have a cause of action that needs addressing from the enemy. You need authority over that enemy to evict him. And so you can't be doing wicked ways and then stand and ask for judgment. Now, Yeshua covers us, Jesus covers us with his blood. So even though we might have something in the past, if we have turned from that wicked way, even if we see it, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't even know I was doing it, and we've turned, now we can repent, pray the blood, we're good. God's blood washes us from our sins. We're good. We become in good standing before the court. We can come boldly before the heavenly court in terms of spiritual prayer and intercession, and we can request what we need, whether it's a divine injunction against the enemy, kind of like now, that can happen. So, got to turn from your wicked ways. Then, of course, he has promised. That's how we know this is going to happen and we are going to win. He has promised to hear from heaven, because we've had many people doing this in mass like I've never seen it in my lifetime. He will hear from heaven. He will forgive our sin. He's promised to do that. He already has. And he will heal our land. Now, doesn't mean that we're not going to have a little battle there. We got skirmishes. We may look like we're losing or lose here and there, but we are going to win the war ultimately. And even if we have to surrender our body to the flames, that's okay, because we're still going to win in the end. And anything we go through here is not going to be anything compared to those who are going to go under eternal judgment. So we can be at peace with that. Now, there's a strong remnant that is battling in the heavenly courts, and we are definitely in what I would say a Matthew 11:12 circumstance, where the violent take it by force kind of circumstance. We'll look at this verse in more depth. There's this decreeing of the truth that we need to be doing on a regular basis. We need to not come in agreement with the false prophets of the news that get you all negative and talking negative and repeating negative things. No, come in alignment with the truth. Speak the truth, declare and decree the truth. Know the character of your God and speak from that perspective, okay? He is righteous, he is just, and he has had it, the fullness of the sin with abortion, all the nonsense has been going on. I think he's had enough. I think this year has shown us, I think the fullness of that's come to an end, and it's coming down hard. As we saw, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on the unique eve of Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement. That is, God hardened her heart, obviously, then during that season, the 8 years that she could have retired, she was old enough to do that way back then, and she could have set that court however she wanted. But he hardened her heart, and she thought she was going to make it. And God said, no way. He was putting a righteous mother, Deborah mother, in there to restore and heal our land and restore those of us that have been crying out for righteous judges. And we got that. That was one insight that I got to give it to Trump's team, that they kept her in the back pocket for just a time as this, and God gave him that kind of insight, and that was brilliant. So she went through there with flying colors, and that was a master move on the chessboard. So, and that was king directed, that of the king, our king, Yeshua, all over it. All right, so decreeing the truth in contrast to false prophets, we need to be doing that and restoring true dominion, right? Ironically, this software with dominion, and believers are about the only ones that use that term ever. We have dominion. We've been given dominion because we are the ambassadors of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. So we're his ambassadors, and we were given dominion of the earth, and it pleases him to use us as vessels to be his hands and feet in the earth. Okay, so real quickly, let's go over the kind of violent, take it by force passages, because I think we're really in that season. But let's get a little more context, starting in verse 8. And Yeshua is saying, but what did you go out to see? That is in the desert, because John the Baptist was out, and he kind of was the nomad out there, right? And a man dressed in soft clothing, those who wear soft clothing are kings, are in kings' palaces, okay? So, but But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you. And one who is more than a prophet. So he's saying this one was more than just your average prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, that would be in the Tanakh, behold, I send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you. Okay? True, I say to you, among those born of women, there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. For the day of John the Baptist until now, the King of heaven suffers violence, and violent men take it, I would say that it there would probably have to be kingdom of heaven, take the kingdom of heaven by force. For all the prophets and the law, the Torah, prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, so prophesied about who? About John and the coming Messiah. John himself is Elisha, who was, i.e., he just says was to come, but was obviously prophesied to come. The verb there connecting with the prophesied in the previous verse. Now, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. But to what shall I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplace who call out to the other children and say, we played the flute for you and you did not dance. We sang the dirge and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking. And they say, kind of like the media, he has a demon. And the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, behold, a gluttonous man and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors, you know, those deplorables and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. Be encouraged. The wisdom of God is going to be vindicated through deeds, and all the deeds, everything that can be shaken will be shaken this year and has been, and we are shining light in dark. He is shining light in dark places as the truth is getting revealed about all of the wickedness been going on in our country. It needs to get cleaned up. All right, so that's encouraging, because that's encouraging that's going to happen. Now, related to biblical standing, let's look at this a little bit more from Jeremiah, getting an idea of the term when standing kind of plays in to where this developed in legal, kind of legalese, but kind of the biblical thing that it was birthed out of. So Jeremiah 50 verse 44 says, behold, one will come up like a lion from the thicket of the Jordan to the perennially, or i.e. continually watered pasture. For in an instant I will make them run away from it, that is the watered pasture. And whoever is chosen I will appoint over it. For who is like me? And who will summon me to court? And who then is the shepherd who will stand, has standing, right, before that court in the heavens, before me? Zechariah 3:7 also says, thus says the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways, and if you will perform my service, then you will also govern my house, and also have charge of my courts, and I will grant you free access among those who are standing here. Whoever has standing in the courts of heaven has, you know, when we see how this works in court language, it's really powerful, right? You got to have standing to approach the king and just come before him to pray. Now, Daniel 7, 10, 12, at least to get things, but you can always pray, I'm saying. So you can get standing, just seek him, pray. He is gracious. I don't want to discourage someone from praying or freak them out that they don't have standing to pray. Pray. You were in the all children are, you know, God's children, but if you're a rebel and you haven't pledged your allegiance to the king, then you need to do that. So a river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were tending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, okay, they're judging, and the books were open. What are these books? Evidence? And then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. Hear that, devil? That's what you get to look forward to. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. All right, and now we have Mark 13:9. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you to the courts, and you will be flogged in the synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony, a witness to them. So we're to be witnesses. We are to stand before our governors and kings. In other words, your legislators and well, not really the courts. I hope you're not in court unless you're fighting as a litigator for justice and truth and righteousness. But this is just to say that we have a role. We need as believers to be in every arm of society. We have abandoned that for too long, and now unrighteous people are ruling. We have to raise up righteous leaders, righteous judges. Our children, whatever God designed them, should go into these fields and carry the anointing, power, and truth of God into every area of culture. That's the mandate, and that's what we really want to happen. Now we'll close with one more, Revelation 5. He says, I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel or messenger. That just means, so angel is a word for, in this case, messenger. So it's an activity descriptive. Proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals? And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the book or to look into it. Then I began to weep greatly because no one was found worthy to open the book or look into it. And one of the elders said to me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. And I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he, that is the Lamb, came and took the book, probably the evidence, out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne, i.e. the judge, right? Now, when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers, right? The legal petitions for redress, right? Of the saints, the holy ones, the set apart ones, the ones that call on his name, humble themselves, pray, seek his face, turn from their wicked ways. And they sang a new song saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals. For you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made them to be a kingdom of priests of our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Did you hear that? The dominion mandate stands. We, God's people, are to reign on the earth. We are to take dominion. All right? And that's still the mandate. We are to reign on earth because we are his ambassadors. We are to bring the kingdom and make it activated on the earth so that heaven and earth start looking the same. Then I looked and I heard a voice of many angels or messengers around the throne and the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. Those 7 things, right? And every created thing that is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them, I heard saying, they're all saying it, because every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Yeshua is Lord, to the glory of God the Father, right? They're going to say, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures kept saying, Amen, Amen. Let it be so. And the elders fell down and worshiped. I hope that encourages you today. And I will have much shorter videos and the remaining videos on the cases, depending on what's going on with the cases, and keeping you updated. I hope you stay tuned, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Go to prolongyourdays.com if you want to link over, find my normal page. I'll be having another page on some of the new platforms for this more political, biblical mix during this season, and seeing how that goes as we kind of transition to new platforms. All right, thanks. See you next time. Bye-bye.